yesterday afternoon in a close, tense, and as it turned out to be, quite important debate for the Wellington region, but possibly for all of us. The Wellington City Council voted yesterday to continue with the controversial $140 million revamp of the Golden Mile. And they also voted against a motion proposed by Councillor Tony Randall, who we had on the show in the past, against withdrawing from the Let's Get Wellington Moving program, a multi-billion idea of public transport that is in part funded by the Greater Wellington Regional Council, the Wellington City Council, and the government, or at least waka kotahi. But we've talked about this before with folk, but for those of you who go to Wellington, one of the things that you notice about the city is the poor state of disrepair it is in comparison to what it used to be. 20 years ago, turn of the century, Wellington was probably, I think they called it at one stage, the coolest little city in the world. And it really was. If you lived there, it had an awful lot going for it. They've revamped Courtney Place and the streets that off it. It was a citadel for citizens. And it was enjoyed. And people would flock there at the weekends to go and see Te Papa and all the variety of exhibitions, to go and shop in Lambton Quay, to go to the wonderful and iconic Kirkcaldy's, but all the other stores and cafes and culture that emanated from it. And if you go there now, not quite. But yesterday, so the Wellington City Council have come up with an idea, and that is because they are essentially a left-wing council, presided over by a Green mayor, Tory Whānau. They decide that there's something wrong inherently, morally and ethically, with cars. They love buses and public transport, but they loathe petrol-guzzling, diesel-quenching vehicles that might just transport you around in some reasonable degree of comfort. And as a result of that, they want to pedestrianise, and yesterday voted to do so, actually this is the time to bring in Barry Wilson, the Save Our Streets convener, who has been petitioning and arguing against this particular policy for quite some time, and he joins us this morning. Barry, welcome to the show. Good to have you on, mate.
Good morning, Michael. Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Well, now, I've got that right, haven't I? So the Wellington City Council had the opportunity yesterday afternoon to revisit this entire strategy, and by a relatively narrow vote, I think 9-6 or 9-7, decided to carry on with it. Did you make some sort of appeal to them prior to that?
Yes, we were given 5 minutes. I just said, look, after 4 years of struggle here and 80 meetings and lots of attention and lots of walking around Courtney Place, we know the hood well. And if we talk about the Golden Mile, it really is only Parliament to Stuart Dawson's, you'd remember that, but they've called it the Golden Mile all the way through. Well, Courtney Place is now the Grotty Mile. It's had 9 years of neglect. It's really, really bad. It's really tatty and it's tired. And the curse of this thing hanging over has really held it back. So we were there to say, look, leave the Golden Mile alone. It's a ram raid on our hero retailers. You don't understand the cause and effect. You don't know the unintended consequences. We think we do. Please take a pause on this part of it.
Right. And they said, bugger off.
We didn't win one vote. We didn't get anyone to change their minds. I thought Councillor Foon, as an ex-retailer, might have empathy with retailers. This is a very big, bold step, and we think it's last century. It's passe. These are old hat ideas drummed up by officers who run the council effectively and their heads, who've gone overseas and done their OE and their backpacking tours and come back and want to turn us into Amsterdam. And I'm not just being a smart ass saying that. That's the dream they have, that we wander around on bikes and have a wonderful sort of life here. But this is Wellington. We're a bit different, In Wellington, for example, one stat that surprised me, we have 122 days of rain a year. That's one every 3 days. Our average wind speed is 25 kilometres. I mean, this is not an easy cycling city. The bus I get on every morning goes around Point Jerningham on a gold-plated cycleway next door. There's hardly ever anybody on it because it just doesn't work for them.
Yes, you're right. The weather's, it can be very unreasonable in Wellington. And as you point out, this is going to affect retailers. But let's just take the Golden Mile for it. For those of us who know Wellington, I think it's almost everybody, we've all been there at some stage in our life. You're going from, you say Parliament, so that's one end of Lambton Quay. Is the pedestrianisation to go all the way from Lambton Quay to Courtenay Place?
Yes, it is, but it's not exactly pedestrianisation because it's not a walking street, because buses will still go down there, but in single file, which is bloody dangerous, one behind the other, and only 3 or 4 feet apart. So they're doubling the route, which Manor Street has now, of buses going head-to-head, which I think is ridiculously dangerous. I spent a long time being a lawyer for a bus company or a stagecoach, and we were very concerned about safety all the time and so on, and we've realised what accidents happen for reasons they do. And one thing is proximity of other vehicles. So this plan is really to extend the footpaths by 75%. They say they're crowded. They're not. This is Wellington, not Foxton. We like the feeling of a capital city. We like the buzzy footpaths. But most of the day, in the afternoon or the morning, you can fire a gun, literally.
No, that's true.
And you would.
Yeah.
So it's a myth. Let's get Wellington moving. Huge on spin, and they've gone overboard, and they're now just telling lies. We don't have congestion of any note except for about an hour in the morning. We don't have crowded footpaths. We're not going to change the planet because Mother Earth is weeping today. Because you see, Michael, the cars that are taken away, they just go next door and emit more. And Let's Get Wellington Moving actually admit this. They'll go to Queensgate and Hart or Porirua. They won't come to Wellington. They're staying away in droves now because they can't find a park. But the problem with congestion in Wellington is actually not on the misnamed Golden Mile. It's at the tunnel, it's at Naranga, it's at up in Lower Hutt Wingate. This is where the pollution and congestion really is. This is the victim route for global posturing.
So, let's be this right. So in the route that I've just described, which is huge, from Lambton Quay all the way through to Courtenay Place, that's massive. What's that, 2.5 miles?
2.3 Ks. 2.3 Ks.
2.3 Ks, okay, rather than miles, okay. That would... So the only thing that will be running there will be buses, and I imagine there'll be some sort of bike trail or something along there through there too, will there?
Lots of bikes and lots of room to walk, and in the middle of the road, the lovely planters are taken out, and we have the buses running head to head.
Right.
And we have these walking plazas. I mean, for people that don't exist, you see, Michael.
So I'm driving into Wellington, and I want to go because I've still got to drive, presumably, into Wellington to go to one of these retail places in the area that you described. Where do I put my car? Somewhere in a parking building, somewhere on the outer fringe of the so-called new Golden Mile?
Well, good question. The council just recently bought 500 car parks in Torrey Street, which is near Courtenay Place, but a bloody long way away from Lambton Quay. But you can get a bus, and the buses along there are reliable. I travel on them 3 times a week at least, so I know what I'm talking about. The bus service in the city is good. It's not really held up. When you see a bus with a car in front, it's just called a procession. It's not really being held up. But when the Greens look at it, they think, oh, look, that naughty car's holding that bus up. It's absolute nonsense. The buses get through the city quite well, but there are 2 massive peaks, of course. We could fix that with all sorts of things like staggered working hours. The trend to work from home has only just begun. Artificial intelligence technology will lower the workforce in the city. The key is quieter than it has been in the last 40 years.
Okay.
So despite all these...
Yes, it is. It is. I mean, anybody... perhaps we appreciate it more because we come and visit you rather than every day. But yes, it is. It's obvious and ostensibly so. But that's the next issue here. So you would be... you're right. I would suggest to you that as an average car owner who likes to be able to drive places, because that's the New Zealand mentality. We are per capita, I think, after the United States, the second greatest car owning democracy in the world.
Correct.
If I can't drive into Wellington to go to my retail, I will drive somewhere where I can, won't I? Are the retailers aware of this? Are retailers thinking, God, we're going to have nobody come to see us now?
We've had 4 years of saying that. We've lost Gubba Shoes. We've lost, just this week announced, the UFS pharmacy in Courtenay Place, a lovely little place, been there 130 years. They can't see a future. Everyone says, oh, it's the chemist warehouse down the road. No, it's not. They're convenient. They're medical professionals. the whole of Wellington Bay and Mount Vic go there. Lovely lady pharmacists, been there for years. They're closing. They're run by a lodge. They're conservative. They say, we see no future down here. The trade patterns are so small. Because have no money in their pockets, they don't spend anyway. They just ride through.
That's true.
In Courtenay Place, it's less than 1% of the people moving through there on bikes. Probably 0.5%. So you're going to make a whole plan round, 0.5% of those moving. And then where are these people who walk going to come from? We're so mad as to say, look, these people you talk about don't even exist. We don't have people to suddenly appear in Courtenay Place and go walking and spending.
Now, the other thing is, Napier tried this, a long time ago, 20 years ago, maybe longer than that, 30 years ago, when I was living there, and then amended it. So they started the old concept of, no, let's go pretty much what you're saying, and they said, nah, it doesn't work. And in the end, Napier's got the ability for cars to go through their main street. Admittedly, not in the same volume, but you can still drive down there and drop somebody off and off you go. That's the other issue here, isn't it? That I can't drop, if I want to drop somebody off somebody, say elderly or something like that, I can't do that either, can I? No, you can't. Look, we had a meeting last week with Retail New Zealand and 180 people turned up at prefab. It was very boisterous. It was 95% to the council saying, no, stop now, you're lunatics, you're barking mad. What we know is this, that the planners, for example, or Kerry Prendergast was there, our former mayor, and she's great. Well, she just said, I apologise for what I did as a mayor. I closed Manor Street to a mall and we killed it. And look at it now, it's $2 shops, it's street living. Yes, that's right, yeah.
Horrendous thing.
Yeah.
And you've got to walk through that on the way to get to Courtenay Place, and then it gets worse, even more grimy.
Yeah.
So Kerry apologised and said, we made a big mistake. And she said, be very careful what you do, because you got to be careful what you wish for. This is a city wrecking ball.
Well, I guess the proof of that. Now, next issue, very quickly. So it's gone. Ta-da! It's happening. Let's get Wellington moving. This sort of vast conglomeration of nonsense will carry on as well. You ended up with the chair. Can I just say the chief executive who was sent packing from the Otago Regional Council. So good on you. Now,
we have met her. She won't meet with us. She won't meet with our group.
Of course she won't.
That's going to Devlin, you know.
Of course you won't. No,
we have a region due. They're on huge salaries of over 300,000.
That's right.
Some of these bureaucrats.
Yep. I know, and completely unaccountable. I know. We have to deal with that in Otago. We solved that problem, can I tell you? But finally, once the city is dead and it is pedestrianised to this extent, I guess the only answer is you have to get a new council in, 2.5 years' time. You'll have plenty of time to be able to gauge the success of this or not otherwise. That's the only solution, a new council, because this council's obviously committed to its course of action, yeah?
They're so wonk and woke, it's just hopeless. Look, we said to them, you can't criticise them for being young, that's great, but some of them are so wet behind the ears, they came down with the last shower. It is a fact of life we have to deal with. This is a huge call. This city is 180 years old, called Suprema ar situ, you know, prime by location. And here we are with these people who don't really have a clue, never been in business, coming along to say to our whole retail sector, hey, this includes farmers, Stuart Dawson's, you know, Partridge Jewellers, the whole lot are saying no. Oh, just one last point for me. Kerry made the point also, Kerry Prendergast, that you can't drop oldies off to the St James Theatre, which is magnificent, really restored. And oldies have to, the minimum walk there is 120 metres to the nearest park. But access is, that bus stop gets closed as well there. You might not recall that, but that's where the toddlers and kids come out of matinees. Now they have to walk the whole gauntlet down Courtenay Place, past all the street living people and all the scenes. I've seen people urinating in the water fountain. I mean, there's someone who does their daily business behind the building on the corner of Tory. This is what we put up with down here. It's not just the problem of spending the money. Oh, just one last thing I could say to you. Look, at 147 million, Michael, this is $64,000 a metre going all the way from the embassy to Parliament. That is a house built every 12 metres. It's gone up by 50% in 1 year. I said to the crowd yesterday, look, I didn't realise inflation was that high. And I got a laugh. I mean, the price of this has gone from 100 mil to to 149 mil in 1 year. So where does it stop? And then they say to the council in a sort of threat, oh, you'll have suits and we've signed contracts. Well, they shouldn't have bloody well signed contracts, but they're saying we're liable. And if we don't do it now, the price will go up. Well, yes, I think the other way, the price can go down, and they listen to us. We could save them 100 million.
Yes, that's right. Listen, I've just got something here from Steve. He says, as a plumber working in Wellington, it's already extremely difficult to get to apartments, etc., which, of course, is what they're trying to encourage inner city living as well, to do repairs. Sometimes we have to walk blocks carrying tools, says Steve. So there are those sorts of considerations to it, I guess, as well.
Access for tradies is a big issue, and couriers and pickups and, all the couriers that come. But in Corny Place, just one what we'll talk about again, is we have about 150 trucks come a day. The other night at 7 p.m, on a Thursday, I saw 12 trucks. We call it Eat Street, which is the south side of Corny, where all the, the greasy spoons, they call them, the little hole-in-the-wall places that sell takeaways. Is rather than, there's 14 ethnicities down here. This is New Zealand's biggest ethnic cluster of restaurants in that style. It's not a Chinatown, but it's almost could be called an Asia town. And I think it's an assault also on all those people and their way of life. I mean, yum cha lunch on Saturday and Sunday is huge. And the Chinese and the Asians come in with their families, grandma down to bubbies, and that's their way of sitting around a table of 12. They all come by car. You won't see these people driving in a car or getting an Uber or riding bikes. It's preposterous. So we're designing a city around a very few selfish elite people.
All right. Barry, thank you very much. So I guess the only way that you can go from now on is to change the council. But by that time, the damage will be done?
The damage will be half done. Look, we've already said the vote yesterday was the Mayor's resignation letter. She just doesn't get it. And you read her media release, which came out last night. It's scripted by someone for her, obviously. But it's the most enormously monstrous babble, talking about how good it is for the city when we know it's not, talking about how people will spend when they don't have money in their pockets, and the people are fleeing. We've lost some of the best retailers in Wellington already, and others are threatening to go. So it's very sad, Michael.
It is.
Thanks for showing interest. We need this kind of exposure. Look, we've had 4 years of the Don Post ignoring us. They don't print our leaders. They've just started doing that. The last editor was obsessed with cycling, and everything she wrote or encouraged was to do with mode shift. They're obsessed with mode shift. But this is Wellington, and we are unique. We're not Auckland or Christchurch. And those cities have jumped ahead of us in terms of tidiness. Everyone knows says, look, Wellington's shabby. My friends come down and have a drink in Corny Place. They say, this is really, really mess.
Yeah, no, it's a scandal, actually, Barry, that our capital of this country is in the mess that it is, and that's why we don't go to Wellington anymore if we can possibly avoid it. Thank you very much for your call. That's Barry Wilson from Save Our Streets convenor. Big decision yesterday in Wellington. And the reason I brought it to your attention is because this is the dream of city planners everywhere, from Dunedin to Auckland, from Wellington to Christchurch. The idea is from local government bureaucrats in particular, all the people who went to the B classes at school, their brilliant idea is, and I think Barry's hit it on the nail, they got a little bit of OE and we want to be Amsterdam, is that they're going to pedestrianise New Zealand. And all that's going to do is drive, you're absolutely right, all those businesses and retail to where the car can go. And then I suppose they'll try and pedestrianise those as well.